Look at this, look at this. Ultimate, chain cancel, summit buff activates while ult happens, Yixuan chain, second ult, cartoon fight cloud massive damage. This character is so sick. Welcome aboard, everyone. As with my previous guides, my promise to you is that I will explain Yixuan from beginner to advanced in a way that is easy to understand and respects your intelligence. The best way to describe Yixuan is easy to pick up, plenty of room to grow. The second best way to describe her is Kiat! Okay, first thing you're going to want to do is ignore the novelist Hoyo hires to write every new character's skill set. I mean, look at this. This is just... First thing for real, there are a few definitions you need to know. This meter is adrenaline. What's adrenaline? No, not that. Adrenaline is what Yixuan's energy is called. It's functionally identical to energy, but it's not called energy, and therefore it isn't affected by things that give energy. Energy regen discs, support unit ultimates that give energy, they do nothing for Yixuan. One positive difference, though, is that you start each encounter with a full adrenaline bar. And similarly, her element is auric ink, which is just not ether. It thankfully is actually just ether, though, and therefore affected by ether things like slot 5 discs. Next term, sheer damage. Sheer damage is easy to understand. It's literally damage where the enemy defense isn't calculated. Really, the math just ignores the enemy defense entirely and bases your damage on your sheer force stat. What that means is that your moves will deal the same amount of damage across all enemies unless they have a weakness or resistance to your element. Last term, technique points. This meter here is your technique bar, which fills up as you spend adrenaline. When it's full, you get to trigger an ultimate that costs no decibels, which is even better than it seems, because Yixuan gets a 40% crit damage buff for 15 seconds whenever she uses an ultimate. We interrupt your regularly scheduled Yixuan guide to tell you about a 10-pull giveaway. On July 31st, I will be giving away a 10-pull to one lucky viewer. The only thing you need to do to enter is subscribe and leave a comment. Notice to my last video, I also had a 10-pull giveaway. The first place winner did not respond, and the second place winner did not respond. So if you leave a comment, be sure to monitor your comment so you can get your 10-pull. Anyway, back to the guide. I personally feel the best way to teach Yixuan is to do a walkthrough of a typical encounter, explaining what I'm doing and why. Your opening move with her will be EX Special. Reason being that you'll want the technique bar full or close to full before the enemy is stunned, so we need to get to burning some adrenaline. Her EX Special has two tricks attached to it, the first being that it can be charged, and you always should do so. When you charge it, it does vastly more damage and anomaly buildup at the cost of not even an extra second. You do not need to charge it anymore after you see this yellow flash. You get no damage benefit from doing so. However, you may want to hold it for longer in some cases. That's right, the second trick attached to her EX Special is that it's also a parry. The parry is what you always want to go for if able, because when you successfully parry an enemy using EX Special, you recover 10 adrenaline. And hey, bonus! You don't actually need to charge to get the parry. You can use her EX Special as an instant parry button as long as you have enough adrenaline, and you'll get the full damage as if you fully charged it. We aren't done with EX Special, by the way. That's only the first part of the move. After doing EX Special 1, you can follow it up with EX Special 2. And side message for all you purists out there, yes, I know the moves have names, but if I say, first do Ink Manifestation, then follow it up with Celestial Cloud Blitz Break, people are going to get lost real fast. Anyways, EX Special 2 costs no extra adrenaline and does respectable damage. No reason not to follow up with it unless there's an attack coming your way. And finally, after EX Special 2, you can do EX Special 3. This one does cost energy, half as much as EX Special 1, so factor for that when using it. Unless you're saving energy for a stun window, you'll want to do EX Special 3 as it deals great damage and it does so in a huge area. If you parry an attack with EX Special 1 when you have the minimum required adrenaline, the 10 adrenaline bonus you get combined with her natural adrenaline generation is just enough to squeeze out EX Special 3. At the very start of an encounter, if the game mode you're playing in gives your teammates energy up front, you'll want to have buffed Yixuan before doing anything with her. But assuming the game mode does not start your teammates off with enough energy, this is where you'll swap to them, get whatever buffs you have going, burn your stunner's energy, and then swap back to Yixuan. Yixuan is very field hungry. So you burned your stunner's energy, you got Panyan who's buff going, what's next? Well, next are EX Specials 1, 2, and 3. Typically, a boss isn't going to be close to stun this early, and you really want to fill that technique bar as much as you can, so no harm using all your adrenaline yet. So you've done EX Special a bunch, and now you're out of adrenaline. What do? The simplest way to recover that adrenaline is by basic attacking. She has a pretty standard 5-hit combo, aside from the fact that all of her attacks build up Anomaly, not just the final few hits like most characters. After the 5th hit of her basic attack, she'll follow up with Dash Attack and then loop from the 3rd hit. You can keep looping her basic attack to build adrenaline until the enemy inevitably attacks you. From there, if you dodge an enemy attack, you'll recover 5 adrenaline. Or, if you perfect assist off of Yixuan, not into her, you'll also recover 5 adrenaline. Additionally, if during the course of any of her attacks you trigger her Auric Ink Anomaly, you'll recover 10 adrenaline. So lots of ways to get that adrenaline back. Which is perfect because all during the fight, that's what you need to be focusing on doing. Only briefly swapping off her to buff or use your stunner's energy, but mainly you need to be on-fielding Yixuan and generating as much adrenaline as you can. You'll figure out the perfect balance as you play her, but to start, try entering the stun window with at least half of your adrenaline bar filled. Whether or not you can do this while also filling the technique bar will partly come down to how aggressive the enemy is. If your luck is like mine and you get an enemy who likes to twiddle their thumbs, your adrenaline generation will suffer for it. Additionally, if someone else on the team gets their ultimate, go ahead and use it. Anytime any member uses their ultimate, Yixuan regens 2 extra adrenaline per second for 10 seconds. Now the enemy's getting close to the stun window, but before we talk about that, we have a few more moves to go over, all of which we'll see used during it. First is Yixuan's special ultimate. As I mentioned earlier, when you fill the technique bar, you gain access to a special ultimate that costs no decibels, instead costing the entirety of your technique bar, which is why we're trying so hard to fill it before stunning the enemy. Second is the move Yixuan gets after doing her special ultimate. You may have noticed a little yin-yang symbol to the right of the technique bar. That's not just for show, it's another resource called an Auric Ink Point. After doing her special ultimate, it'll spin and glow orange. If you then press and hold dodge, it'll spend that Auric Ink Point to do this wide AoE attack, which regenerates 7 adrenaline per second for 3 seconds for 21 adrenaline total. If you press and hold dodge after either of her ults or EX Special 3, you can link directly into this move without dodging first. And the third attack we need to go over is her EX Special. No, not that one. The one you do by holding basic attack. The one you do by holding basic attack. The EX Special that you do by holding basic... Okay, so if you hold basic attack, Yixuan will do this? The fuck was I smoking? Okay, so if you hold basic attack, Yixuan will Okay, so if you hold basic attack, Yixuan will do this move you see here, aptly called Cloud Shaper, and it counts as EX Special damage, which is good because that means it fills up the technique bar. This move sees no use outside of the stun window. However, during the stun window, the move gets a 30% damage buff, which is just amazing. Okay, so finally, the enemy is about to be stunned. Now what? During the stun window, you have a few options. If you don't care about the meta and just want to swing away, then I don't know why you clicked on this video. I'll give you 2 options. The first is basic. Stun with anybody except your stunner, then switch to your stunner. This will refresh King of the Summit. If your stunner doesn't have that drive disc set equipped, they should. After that, switch back to Yixuan, then use both of your ultimates, and finish off with Cloud Shaper until you run out of energy. If only one of your ultimates are available, then you should use it and see if you can get the other one before the stun ends. If neither ultimate is available, then manage your resources better. The second, much more meta option is the one you saw in the intro. For this, you're going to want at least 80% of the technique bar filled, and at least half of your adrenaline bar, ideally more. I'm going to go through this at a slow speed to make it easier to follow. First, get the enemy stun meter somewhere between 92 and 99%. Next, press and hold basic attack to use Cloud Shaper. Once the enemy is stunned and you have a full technique bar, release. This is the only sort of tricky part. As you release Cloud Shaper, you're going to use your special ultimate. The timing on this is not hard, don't be intimidated, but it may take you a few tries to figure it out. I personally use her hand as a tell, pressing ult right as it passes in front of her chest. What happens next is Yixuan activates her ultimate, then because Cloud Shaper has a small delay, it hits after, triggering the chain attack. This allows the next person you chain to attack while Yixuan is doing her ult, saving a lot of time. From here, you'll switch to your stunner to refresh the King of the Summit buff, switch back to Yixuan for her chain damage, then use her regular ult. If you have plenty of adrenaline to spare, press and hold basic attack to use Cloud Shaper. You can even get 2 uses out of it if you have enough adrenaline. Make sure you release the second one before the stun window ends. Rewinding a bit back to her regular ult. After this, if you don't have a lot of adrenaline, press and hold dodge to spend that auric ink point to regen some. While that's happening, switch to Panda, Astra, or whomever you have to activate Astra Voice. Quick assist back into Yixuan, and then use Cloud Shaper. Additionally, if you're strapped for adrenaline even before the stun window, you can activate the same type of chain cancel using her basic attack 5, the Thunderbolt, but the timing is trickier. So to recap, open with buffs when possible, switch to Yixuan and EX Special, always parrying if able. EX Special 2 follow-up is free, EX Special 3 is almost always worth doing. If you didn't buff earlier, do it now and use your stunners, then back to Yixuan. Fill adrenaline with basic attack, dodges, defensive assist, auric ink anomaly, or when someone else uses an ultimate. Spend your adrenaline to fill the technique bar, aiming to have it full or close to full before stun, while also rationing your adrenaline to have it available during the stun. After initiating chain attack, activate King of the Summit buff, chain to Yixuan, use both of your ults, finish off with Cloud Shaper. Expend your auric ink point if you need to, and prepare for the next stun. Then repeat until the enemy's head is thoroughly bashed in. And here's a few straggler pieces of her kit that don't come into play normally. If you press and hold dodge while moving, Yixuan will fly at a good speed. You can use this in combat or out of combat in the hollow. When used in the hollow, you'll automatically collect resources that you fly close to. Her non-EX special attack dodges backwards and hits the enemy. You won't typically use it except to activate something like Pulchra Aftershock, or maybe if your dodge is on cooldown. Even when you don't have an auric ink point, you can still activate this move by holding dodge, but it does less damage and won't regen adrenaline. Still, it drags enemies closer in an AoE, plus you take 40% less damage while using it. And that's all her moves. Her moveset is surprisingly simple. The difficulty solely comes down to resource management. For her engine, obviously her signature is best, but her next best is actually whatever limited crit rate or damage engine you have, like Soldier Anbi, Haru's, Evelyn's, Nekomatas, any of those are good. Because they're not rupture engines, you won't get any of the abilities, but the pure stats make up for it. Next best option would be the Battle Pass weapon, but not yet, as at the time of recording, it's stuck at upgrade level 1. So finally, that leaves us with the craftable rupture engine, which at upgrade level 5 is pretty solid. For drive discs, you'll obviously want Yunkai Tails, and your 2-piece option will either be Woodpecker Electro or Branch and Blade. Your goal is to get at least 80% crit rate. Yunkai Tails gives a functionally permanent 12% crit rate increase, so around 70% on the stat screen is fine. For substats, you want crit rate and damage, followed by HP percent. Yes, HP percent. As the more HP percent you have, the more sheer damage Yixuan deals. Attack percent is still useful as it gets converted to sheer damage, but not as much as HP does. Slot 4 will be crit damage or rate. Slot 5 will be ether or HP percent, with ether damage being preferred. And slot 6 will be HP percent only. And finally, here's a special secret sauce technique for those of you who stuck around to the end. When you defeat an enemy, you want to always do it using EX Special 2 specifically. It's extremely imperative that you do so. I can't really explain why, but if you get it, you get it. Thank you everybody for watching. I'm trying to get into the creator server, and so 1,000 subs is my current goal. Please subscribe, leave a comment, thank you, and get off my shit. Bye-bye.